Hi, I'm Jane Hillsdon, marketing consultant and founder of Dragonfly Marketing. Welcome to this episode of the How to Do Marketing Show, a no-nonsense podcast about marketing for small business. It's our mission at Dragonfly Marketing to put marketing on the agenda for every regionally based small business in Australia. Why? Because we know that when marketing is done properly, it can help your business grow. We believe small businesses are the backbone of our nation. When your business grows, it benefits not only you and your family, it benefits your whole community. Small businesses create a vibrant and connected economy. We employ local people, we donate to local charities, and we work together to build resilient and thriving regional communities. The How to Do Marketing Show is a podcast just for you and your small business. Bursting with marketing insight and information, this show will be a fabulous resource to help you know all there is to know about the topic of marketing for small business. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you a fan of Airbnb accommodation? I know I am. I love it. I love that you get to stay in what seems like a really familiar home environment when you're away. And when I'm choosing an Airbnb, I'll always opt for something that is stylish or has really kind of unique interior decoration or, of course, a beautiful location, because this really inspires me. It ignites my curiosity and gives me ideas for creative touches that I can bring back with me from my stay and implement them into my own home. So I was delighted when one of my How to Do Marketing listeners, Sky from Art House Industries, pointed out the Instagram profile for an Airbnb accommodation called Captain's Rest, which is in Tasmania. From the moment I landed on this Instagram grid, I was captivated. The images alone just transported me immediately to the remote far west corner of Tasmania where this beautiful renovated little shack is located. Sky then told me about Sarah Andrews. So Sarah purchased the shack years ago and transformed it into this magical space. And now this remote little shack on the edge of the earth is honestly one of the world's most sought after Airbnb accommodation listings. So as a result of her success with Captain's Rest, Sarah soon had enquiries flooding in from other aspiring Airbnb providers wanting to know how she created this amazing business. So now Sarah runs a school showing people how to achieve this, and boy has she achieved some phenomenal results with this. She has such an incredible story with such a diverse background of experience, including a stint running her own marketing agency. But I want her to tell you that. So please let me introduce you to the incredible Sarah Andrews. Welcome, Sarah. Welcome to the How to Do Marketing Show.
Thanks, Jane.
No problems. Look, I've been really looking forward to my chat with you. You were actually a recommendation from one of my listeners who follows you, and I think she's actually done your Hosting Masterclass, and she said, you've got to see what this woman does. It's incredible. And then, of course, I got completely lost on your Instagram, your grid, and became really intrigued about what you do. So I've been really looking forward to this chat. And I'm going to start off by asking you, one of the first places that I landed after Sky had told me about you was your website, of course. Well, it was Instagram and then your website. And the bio on your website introduced you as a designer, a stylist, a storyteller, an author, an innkeeper, a teacher, a collaborator, photographer, adventurer, and sailor. And to me, I was like, oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I want your life because that sounds amazing. And secondly, can you just share the story of how you got to the space that you hold all of those magical positions today?
We've got an hour.
Yeah. Hit us with it.
I'll give you the short version. So I grew up, my parents are swag makers. They live 5 hours north of Perth. So I grew up on the beach, which was then a place that was very remote and distant. And I had these amazing parents who hand make swags and it wasn't until I got to university in Perth that I realised that wasn't a normal upbringing. Kind of used to ride my horse down to Red Rooster through the drive-through, and that was a full day's adventure. But I ended up studying spatial sciences in Perth in the early 2000s and became a spatial scientist, which was a very new area of science at the time. And it still is a very niche area of science. But basically my expertise was the science of how space works, how things are distributed in space and how they're related to each other, how things can change over space and time and distance. So it was really like the maths and physics of space, and it could be applied to any subject. So I ended up working in London for a really amazing high-end consultancy which worked on mega projects all over the world using my science in archaeology and design and security, geotechnics, whoever needed my skills, I suppose, which was really interesting because I'm someone who needs a lot of variety. Like I can't do the same thing every day. So getting to go into these teams and learn all about archaeology or learn all about biosecurity and then help them understand what was happening and create mathematical formulas for them to predict the future or figure out what had happened in the past, or help them see under the ground where they couldn't physically see with this science, which was really cool. But you know, in my mid-20s, I quickly realised that I could blink and be 60 and still be here. And being a young person, I just wanted more out of life at that time. So I decided to quit my job, which was everyone's dream job, working for the best company in the world. And I said, I will just travel around and then figure it out what's next. Like I'll just give myself a few years off and then figure it out. So I traveled around the world and had a great time, but I still didn't really understand what it was that I wanted from life. And I was sort of, you know, what's the point? Kind of, why are we here? Those questions that you ask yourself. And then I decided that I would buy a boat and sail back around the world the other way by sea. And at that point I'd had no sailing experience, but I thought, how hard could it be? But it turns out there's a lot to know. But I spent a year full time learning to sail and buying my own boat and getting that ready in America. And left, I think it was 2008, something like that. And had an amazing time, maybe about a year and a half's worth of sailing and living on myself. But I ended up in a freak accident sinking off Mexico. The whole thing was like, could have been a movie. It was like a dark and stormy night. Everything was going wrong, and I ended up hitting something, and it was either like a shipping container or a whale or just something, like a freak accident. And I ended up sinking the boat and getting rescued by the Navy. It was all very dramatic. And after that, I lived in this little beach shack in the middle of nowhere, Mexico, for 6 months because I didn't have anything. I had no money, I had no ID, no passports, no clothes, and I had no visa to be in the country, but no passport to leave. And at that time, swine flu was happening around the world, so it was, you couldn't travel. So I lived in this little shack, kind of just decompressing from the experience that I had for about 6 months before I could get back to Australia. But in that time, what I realised, having been so close to death, is that you should always just follow your passions in life, whether they have, you should always do things without expecting a result. I think too many of us think, well, I won't do that because I won't make any money out of it, or I won't buy that house because I won't be able to rent it. Like, if you think with the end in mind, it kind of limits your experience of what's possible. So I decided I would go back to Melbourne and study a design degree and start over, because I'd always been so creative, and I never did design because I just felt like it was a very competitive industry where people aren't that well paid. You know, the fear of what could happen to me being a designer put me off following my passion for doing that. So I just decided to do it because it's what I felt passionate about. And I think at the time someone had told me you should do for work what you do in your spare time. And I was always like Pinteresting, drawing maps, designing things for my friends and business cards. And so I thought, well, that's pretty good advice. You should really try and do for a living what you're very passionate about. And I wasn't out doing spatial science in my spare time. So
funnily enough.
And that went really well. And I got hired straight out of uni, which was such a competitive industry. But I ended up deciding that I would start my own design and marketing firm, because I was very passionate about helping people in remote communities with design. And coming from a remote community, what I saw was these design firms would come in and put like a city stamp on a regional or remote problem, which didn't feel fair. It didn't do the job. So I started a small firm with the best people that I knew that I'd worked with in terms of like marketing, design, web, you know, sort of across the board, and helped really cool like remote communities, Aboriginal communities, you know, all sorts of things, which was awesome. And I learned so much, and I had so many good experiences, and sitting with people and helping them design their own annual reports, you know, based on their own words and their own pictures, and creating stories and pieces of work for people that were really meaningful to them and important, rather than were winning design awards, which was amazing work. But after about 5 or 6 years of that, I realised I had a team of 10 working for me, that I was again back in the office, and again not cubicle bound because I was working from my own beautiful space, but you know, I was in the same position as I was 10 years prior, and bound to the emails and bound to the calendar and invoicing and meetings, which isn't what I wanted for my life, having grown up free and wild. So I ended up moving to Alice Springs. I was married at the time, and I thought I'll put the design work down. I'll wind that up because I'm moving. You know, I sort of kept a little bit on and see if I could figure out what my next passion is.
Yeah.
Very quickly became interiors. So I did a lot of interior study. I did about 5 or 6 houses of my own. I did other people's houses, and it really became an area that was so interesting to me, because with the design and the science background, I could see that visual aesthetics is essentially a science, and there's a way that things are put together that are based in storytelling and based in arrangement in a spatial way. So it really did combine everything that I knew and then everything I loved, which was really cool. So I still hadn't exactly found it, what I was sort of here to do, but I was enjoying the work. But I wasn't really enjoying living in Alice Springs, and I wasn't really enjoying my marriage at the time. And I sort of had felt like I'd had this really big experience that no one could understand, but then I was just thrown back into Melbourne, and I was in uni, and then I was working on my own business, and I'd never really had a chance to decompress about this really scary experience I'd had. So I had a little bit of money, and I decided that I would buy a shack. At the time, Tasmania wasn't that popular, especially not the West Coast. It was sort of like, why would you buy a place there? But for me, I really just needed a place that was mine by the sea, where nobody was, no one lived there, no one would go there. So I bought it. But while I sort of was going through that phase, my marriage crumbled. I got sick. I had very scary skin cancer again for the second time, which really frightened me. And I was dealing with all of these problems, and I wasn't working, but the only thing I did have was this little shack that I could rent. So I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to finish the renovations and rent it on Airbnb to support myself through being sick, through this divorce, paying legal fees, and live with my parents at the same time. This is how I'm just going to have to make this work, because it's literally the only avenue that I have. So that's how how all the hats I think that I wear came about.
Wow.
And from that point, I think just using everything that I had learnt and understood, and also sort of really calling on the help of some of my dearest friends who are photographers and people who work in marketing, and people who work in management as top CEOs, all really stepped in to help me and teach me what I needed to know to be one of the world's best micro hoteliers, because I just needed this work. I needed it to be a place that people went every night of the year at $450 a night, because I didn't really know what my other options were going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
It was a process of testing things, taking everything I knew and everything I wanted to know and learning it and then testing it. And then it was a great testing base to see what actually was successful, what had the biggest impact, what things I tried that didn't really make too much of a difference but did take a lot of my time.
Yeah.
And then very quickly people noticed what I'd done and created out of literally nothing. Like it'd been on for 5 years. Everyone looks at it. No one thought it could work. And I started getting asked to help other people. And what I've noticed is I wasn't actually going and doing the work. What I was doing is teaching them how I did it and letting them put their thoughts and ideas and aesthetic and passions into the right slots in my process.
Yeah.
I was at the point where I was getting 5 emails a day asking for help, and I couldn't get to everyone. And I decided that I would hold a workshop so everyone could come, I could teach them all, and then I could go back to my life. But then that workshop sold out, and then that workshop, and then all those people who did the workshops went away and became giant successes, and they told all of their friends. So now my full-time job is teaching other people how I do it, because they've all been so successful that then other people want to know. And
yes, right.
There's schools worldwide now. I teach every country on the planet, and they all are incredibly successful and happy, which is a good thing as well. Low stress levels and good return on their investments. Maybe not as good this year, but they're doing better than everybody else, which is great.
I bet. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your story is so captivating. Like that's you've lived like a whole lifetime in your life so far. And you definitely don't look old enough to have lived an entire lifetime, but you've certainly been through your trials and tribulations and highs and lows, and obviously spent so much time, traveling the world. And I think, for me personally, travel is my inspiration. I'm not a stylist. I'm not a designer. I'm a marketing consultant, but, even my ideas and, stimulation just comes, I think, from being out of your comfort zone and in a completely different environment where your thinking is challenged. And it sounds like, I mean, I have so many questions, like when you're talking about your experience with crashing the yacht and living in Mexico. And for me, I was just like, oh my God, imagine how amazing Mexico would have been to, I imagine you were bloody terrified at the time because you washed up on shore in Mexico without a visa and you can't get out of there and there's swine flu. But, Mexico for me is this place of just absolutely incredible artistic creation and color and vibrance, and Frida Kahlo, I think, would have to be my all-time favorite inspiration. So I can imagine you've amassed such a beautiful kind of base to your creativity. And I had no idea you'd started out as a spatial scientist. But it's funny because, and for listeners, you can't see this, but I'm looking at this backdrop that Sarah's put together. She's in one of the houses that she styled. And it's so beautifully simple, but the spacing. So I'm looking at like a fire. Oh God, fireplace? God, I can't even think of my words. Fireplace, and it's got like 3 items: a clock and an owl, and a stuffed owl by the looks of things, and which is kind of in this beautiful pose. Like it looks like it's kind of almost in full flight. It looks like it's almost just identified its prey and it's about to swoop down. And then this beautiful kind of vase of some dried flower that I don't know the name of, but they're so beautifully spaced. And I was wondering, gosh, is that got something to do with spatial science? Or is that just, a beautiful, beautiful eye? But anyway, I digress. What you were talking about before in terms of the little shack that you purchased, you've called that Captain's Rest. That's your Captain's Rest accommodation, right? So if you go, like if our listeners go to Captain's Rest and search up Captain's Rest on Instagram, you'll see that it has an Instagram following of 43,000 followers. And when you were talking before about how you've turned this little shack into an international destination, and you have, this is what she's talking about, is this Captain's Rest. And this is where I first landed after hearing all about you, was this beautifully, beautifully created and curated Instagram profile for Captain's Rest. And literally it's a journey in itself. From the moment that you kind of land on that grid, you're transported to this remote and moody and seductive environment where and I think there's quite a few photos of rainy and inclement weather, but it looks beautiful and it looks comforting, and you look like you would be protected in this beautiful shack. And I really only had to look at 2 or 3 of your images, and then I read your beautiful prose and the beautiful words that had accompanied them. And literally it didn't take me long until I was on that booking page going, right, when COVID is over, like I am headed in this destination. How did you know that showing up on this platform was going to create such a beautiful impact?
I tested them all, and really just started writing down my statistics.
Interesting.
Same thing with booking platforms. And it's just, for me, it was a matter of testing what worked and what didn't, what had an impact and what didn't, and being quite logical about things. Because it was my passion, but at the time I needed to make this work. It was, I was in a very bad situation. I was very anxious about money, and I really, really needed to have my house booked, and I really needed people to come and pay a lot of money to be there. I needed to convince them to drive 5 hours from Hobart to go. So I needed to make it work. So it was literally a matter of using all the different platforms, seeing what worked, what had engagement, where people were booking from, and what platforms they felt comfortable booking with, and gathering my own data. Because at the time, and still now, people who work in this industry as kind of like the experts, they don't really know. They will just kind of give you general advice to use social media to promote your business, but they don't tell you how. You get all this advice out there, and these people who say that they're experts giving like general suggestions, but not specific advice. And what I needed was, here's 5 things to do to make sure that people know what you're doing and how to book. I needed things to be exact, which was really frustrating for me. Being a scientist who then moved into the creative world, what I found was that people really loved working with me and hiring me because I could give them a sense of exactness. I could be very clear about things and follow a process, and provide a list of deliverables that worked. Whereas a lot of other creative people, it's like, oh, well, you should have color and you should have texture, and you really need to think about social media, and you really need to think about storytelling, and it's all a bit wishy-washy, and you think, well, yeah, I understand that, but how do I do it? And please tell me exactly what to do. So I had to go and find all these things out for myself. And I had to find out where my market hung out, which was Instagram at the time, and probably still is, I think.
Yeah.
how it's going. I do have a Facebook page. I don't think many people follow it. I don't really use it anymore, but
Yeah. So it was trial and error, and obviously, if people go and check out the Instagram feed, you'll see how beautifully that Sarah has put the content together on that feed. Have you, to build and amass your followers, but not only followers, like clearly this is a platform that has, you've built the on platform activity of followers and likes and engagement and that sort of thing, and you can see that, but it's clearly transcribed to bookings. I mean, as I said, I was like booking like seriously after seeing 3 posts. It's really, really compelling. So why? So I get that you kind of had done the trial and error thing to get there. Did you actually pay? Like, is this an organic following, or did you actually use some of the advertising features for Instagram once you'd kind of decided to be there?
No, it's completely organic.
Wow.
Maybe a year I've started testing out paid stuff. Because I really want to understand how that works and if it does work. And to be honest, it doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
I've tried a couple of different things like promoting posts and running like beautiful video ads and things, but it doesn't work for me. What works for me across Captain's Rest and the Hosting Masterclass is authenticity, really connects to people, and also other people saying good things about me that are true. So word of mouth. So those are the 2 things for me personally that work. Paid advertising, giveaways, gimmicky stuff just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I have found that if I give Instagram a little bit of money a year, like $50, I think that my spot in the feed tends to get a little better.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm somewhat of a paying customer every now and then, I get a little bit of preference.
And do you personally like hanging out on Instagram? Like, as a user, is Instagram a space that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I used to. In the early years, loved Instagram, loved interacting and finding things. But now my life looks so different. I've run 3 businesses, and I also like to have a good quality of life. That's really important to me, is having a lot of time off and doing all the things I want to do. So I find that when I'm on Instagram, it's to put a post up or respond to some DMs. I don't have a lot of time anymore to interact and explore other people's work, which is sad, because it's overwhelming. Like in a day across all my businesses, I might get hundreds of DMs. So I'm at the point now where I can't even look at most of them. So it's changing for me, but I have to be okay with that next step as well.
Yeah.
But I always wonder what people think if I don't respond to their comments. I just can't anymore.
Yeah. And that was what I was going to kind of ask you next, because when, as a user, you can kind of see that there's clearly a lot of engagement on your post. Like, loads of people are commenting and liking and those sorts of things. And regardless of the fact that you're, not getting to necessarily personally to respond to those, like, I think for me, I think they're commenting because what you've actually offered to them, what you've given them, has compelled them to reach out to you. It's so beautiful, and it evokes such an emotive response. So I'd say a lot of them are just kind of commenting and maybe not responding, not expecting a response, of course, unless they're asking a question, but you're saying that they're DMing you. If you had tips or advice that you could share with other businesses, even if it's kind of outside the hospitality realm, if you had other tips and advice as to how to kind of grow and nurture that Instagram community, what would they be?
I think the biggest thing I can share with everyone is a sense of authenticity. I learned a lot of what I know from my parents. They have an Instagram account called Murchison River Swags, and they spend their life documenting the spider that was in the canvas roll and this bird that flew into the workshop. And it's very quaint, but it's very engaging. And I've had to mute Mum now I hope she doesn't because it's thick and fast, these essays of their daily life. But their sense of their passion for what they do and their passion for their customers is thick, and you can feel it. And it is true. I grew up sitting on the, swag making bench and watching them sew, and they just genuinely really love what they make. Their design hasn't changed for 30 years, and they are so proud to be able to make those for beautiful people who are going on all these adventures. And I feel the same way about what I do. Like, I love Captain's Dress. It's part of my journey. The Hosting Masterclass is something that I'm so proud of, because it's thousands of students that I've taught now, and they've all gone on to have all of this wild success in ways that's really important for them. And it might not be, getting a lot of press for some people. It might be, I don't have to go and work in an office anymore. I'm home with my kids. So everyone has different goals, and hearing every day those stories, the DMs are just thank you letters of how I've been able to make an impact in their life. There's a sense of genuineness about everything that I say, and I'm not doing it because I want to sell a product or I want to sell a workshop. I'm doing it because I'm genuinely passionate about what I've made, and I genuinely believe it will make someone's life better. I know people are going to have a beautiful experience when they stay at Captain's Dress. I know that my class will change their life forever, and they'll join this incredible community of other people who will support them. So when I look at other people's accounts, there's always, like, I think as humans we have a good nose for the inauthentic. Like, you can sniff it out immediately. And I think the biggest mistake people can make is thinking about, oh shit, there's my phone.
Do you know what? What an authentic moment that we've just captured.
Oh God, I wish I could say I have a PA to do that for me, but I don't.
Yeah, no, it's a busy day for you.
Yeah, as soon as you can sniff it out in a millisecond when something isn't real.
Yeah.
And humans, we all crave a sense of realness. I think when people start out, they look at all these big Instagram accounts and think they need to be just like them. And there are hundreds of Captain's Dress now, but none of them are successful because they're trying to be something they're not, because that was successful for me. So a little exercise I had my class always do is I get them to think about a couple of Instagram accounts they really love. Like, they genuinely love seeing their posts. And what they all figure out as a class is it's not the big perfect Instagram accounts with perfect tiles and all the colors match. The reason they love these accounts is because there's a sense of authenticity behind them. Their photography is not always perfect. There's lots of spelling errors. Sometimes they share too much information. Sometimes they share nothing. But it's that authenticity that builds almost like a relationship.
Yes.
Between over the platform.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I completely agree with you there. And I think that's where Instagram probably gets its most criticism is the fact that the people who are showing up in an inauthentic way are kind of creating this bubble, this unrealistic bubble that then perpetuates as people try and kind of also, become this person that person seems to be becoming, etc. And I think all of us just want to come back down to earth and understand that we're all just human. So if someone creates that and holds that space for someone in such a beautiful way on Instagram, I can completely relate to why that would endear people to them, because look, at the end of the day we all want to feel comfortable. We don't want to go to Instagram and feel like we're not as good as this person, or not doing as much, or not as creative, or don't have as many likes, or whatever the case may be. So that's, I think, so important. And I want to ask you about your hosting masterclass, but I also want to chat to you about Airbnb as well. But because we're talking about the hosting masterclass, what is this hosting masterclass? What do you offer for people?
So I've created an entire school for basically anyone who wants to be some kind of micro hotelier. Although I'm finding maybe 40% of my students are people who just have businesses now or products. or are interested in styling. So I don't know how that works, but I think because the material is so good, people just delete the word house and insert the word my ceramics or my tea towels, or because what I'm teaching can be really applied to anything.
Interesting.
So I've created a school. The workshops got bigger and bigger and bigger until I couldn't handle them anymore. I couldn't put on enough classes to satisfy the demand. And luckily, a dear ex-girlfriend of mine, who we're still very good friends, it's an incredible filmmaker. She flies all over the world and creates like French perfume ads and fashion stuff. And I said, do you think we could make an online school that was actually good and not shit? You do a teachable course and it's just so shit.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it because I can't get to everyone. Not everyone can afford to come to one of my classes. Not everyone can find the time with kids and work, or flying in from Singapore or wherever they are. So I would love to make a class which is just as good as this or better, because I'll be able to put even more information in. So she hired all the best people she knew. So we had a team of 15, and I flew to South Africa and we hired this like 300-year-old barn, and we spent 2 weeks and we made the online hosting masterclass with like hazers and lights and stylists. And it took nearly 6 months, I think, for the whole thing to be finished editing with the website. And we hired some education professionals that would help us make sure that we were teaching in the best possible way.
Oh, wow.
I sort of decided that I'd put everything I had into this, like every penny I had, I would invest. And if it didn't work out, I would know I did the best I could. And I think that was important to me, rather than spending 20 grand and just giving it a crack. I think it was important that I did the best I could, and I wanted to make the most beautiful class in the world. So when people sat down and did it, they would feel amazing. That experience they were having was beautiful. They felt proud to be doing it and were really engaged in the process.
Yeah, yeah.
And it worked. It was good.
That's amazing. So then, so you're not, are you doing the face-to-face masterclass anymore, or is it all done by the online programs?
No, 2020 really. I was going to do a few a year, because the face-to-face classes, I think there's usually a team of 5 of us that has to fly together and put them on. So it's this huge event, and my energy levels aren't massive. You know, you meet these people and they're working out 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who can do that.
Yeah.
Do a class, I probably need 2 or 3 weeks off. I'm so drained.
Yes.
So I was going to do a couple a year, but they've all been cancelled this year.
Yeah.
What we do is we did, you could do the online school, or you could do the online school plus like 5 Zoom meetings as a group. So it was kind of our COVID alternative.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
We've just started doing that, and that's been really beautiful. I'm still learning how to use Zoom.
I know. It's one of those things that we've all had to get our heads around. For me, and look, I'm in regional New South Wales as well. So for me, it's actually opened my world up, because I have been able to connect with people from all over Australia, both, you know, for conversations as well as for work. So it's been fantastic. I love Zoom, but it still doesn't offer that human to human connection, which I think a lot of us are craving, and we will even more, you know, as this goes on. But okay, so now there's these online programs, and how fortuitous that you'd actually gone away and got those developed before, you know, COVID struck, and so you didn't have to kind of rush and do that during COVID like a lot of us. What, out of interest, why South Africa? Why did you go to South Africa to film them?
I lived there for a few years, so I wanted to do it outside of Australia. I usually spend 4 or 5 months every year not in Australia.
Yeah, nice.
So that year I was in South Africa, and I just knew I could get. I asked people here who are really at the top of their game, And they just weren't that inspiring to me. They weren't that interested in what I was doing. They didn't really get my vision either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I needed to ring Benita because I knew that she knew me so well. She followed the journey the whole way through. She knew what I liked and the standard. And I knew that she would make me a feature film every
Right.
time. So I had that trust in her. So I was willing to fly there.
Okay, so she's based in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Whereabouts in South Africa?
She's in Cape Town.
Nice, nice. We went to South Africa a couple of years ago. It's one of my favourite places in the world. We had such a great time. Okay, so what about Airbnb? Because is that the like you Captain's Rest is through Airbnb? Do you use any other directories, or is it just through Airbnb?
I started off using them all because I wanted to test.
Yeah.
Airbnb really was just for me the easiest. It was where all my bookings were coming from anyway. The guests were having a great experience using the platform. It was easy for them to do things without my involvement. So it just came down to like a management decision for me because I wanted to have as little communication as possible with guests to save my time. I wanted it just to be easy so I didn't have to spend a lot of time doing this.
Yeah.
So that's basically the reason why I use Airbnb. But then when that changes, I'll change because all of my bookings come from my own marketing.
Yes.
Instagram and different press that I do. I think on the early years, I'd put like a question on my Airbnb form, like, how did you find us? And they all just said Instagram or country style or like a press article I'd done. So no one really was staying through like a search on Airbnb.
Yes.
So for me, it wasn't really that important, but it was just kind of ticked all the boxes that I needed for the black and white stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine, so while there might have been a bit of a decline in travel and people being able to come and stay at Captain's Rest, etc. Well, not necessarily if a lot of people come from Tasmania, I guess they've been able to do it. But have you noticed that there's actually been a huge increase in people wanting to take those online programs? Like, has that kind of managed to balance the disruption out a bit?
Yeah, I think initially people were terrified, like, our classes were really quiet for the first couple of months because people just didn't know what was happening. But now what I've found is every class I'm running is now completely booked out because people recognize that now is the time to be doing the work for when their doors open next year or this year, hopefully, who knows. But to really get a home up and running to a Captain's Rest kind of standard, it does take a few months.
Yeah.
And to build the following you're going to need to sort of start generating that kind of hype around your property, you do need 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work. So I think people are finally getting it that they should be doing it now while they've got the time and they've got the availability in their calendars to get into their properties and do some work. So I'm busy, which is good, and people are busy out there doing the work, which is also good. Now it's just kind of a, when will our doors open?
Yes, yes, yeah, that's right. And you mentioned before that you actually get a lot of press articles. How do you approach that? Do you go out to the magazines? Like, do you go out and make quite a concerted effort as a part of your marketing plan? Or do you find, because you've kind of created such an amazing business and an amazing, accommodation, that they find you? Is it a mix of both? How does that work?
Now it's people asking me, which is great. It makes my life easier because then I can just sort of see what aligns. In the beginning, I did start generating some of my own press, but what I'm finding now with most of my students is they're getting approached pretty much from day one because they're able to start saying or telling such authentic stories of their own, and people notice that. Writers and editors are all trolling Instagram constantly for content because they're all very content poor and need it. So as soon as they see something different or inspiring, they're straight onto the DM, like, can we photograph this house? Can we interview you? Can we use this picture? Because everyone's looking for something real, something new, something inspiring. And luckily our students have learned how to do that. So
yeah, Yeah. Yeah.
than other people.
And you mentioned, obviously, you've mentioned a few of your students that have been through the masterclass. Have you got any success stories of students that have been through the masterclass that you can share with us?
So many.
I bet.
There's literally not one student who hasn't been wildly successful. There was a list that went out a few months ago of the 100 top Airbnbs in Australia, and 98 of them were my students.
No.
So you wouldn't, I think if anyone's wondering, just DM whatever Airbnb they love and ask if they're a student, and I'll say yes.
That is amazing. My God, Sarah, that is such a huge success.
Yeah, and like all of the top Tassie accommodations are students of mine. So, Sheepwash Bay, Whale Song, there's just so many of these iconic Airbnbs that are all my students. So,
Wow, that's incredible. How does it feel to be making such an incredible impact?
it feels so good because, my class is just this one fee that people pay me to come and study, and then they have a lifetime of success from that. Most of my students, I try and keep in touch and ask them for real data. They're making, up to 100 grand more than this year, than they were before they'd done the class. So for me, I'm just so proud that I'm able to give people that, because it is an amazing thing to be able to do for someone else, is to help them in their life with working for themselves, working in whatever their passion is, giving them more time, giving them their own income so they're in charge of their own lives. So what I'm giving people is so much more than a school. It's giving them the opportunity to really follow their dreams and to be a success in that. And it is amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And I've got a lot of friends, so
Yeah.
really good.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. Congratulations. That is serious impact. And from kind of where you were, if it was 5 years, was it 5 years ago, did you say that you'd kind of landed on the shores of Tasmania, bought the shack and
Maybe, yeah, 4 years ago, I think.
like you've come so far just in that 4 years. And obviously you've had a few changes along the way. Do you feel like you're kind of there forever now, or do you think this is like something that will also pass at some point?
That's a big question. I don't know. I think right now I'm very dedicated to my work with the Hosting Masterclass because of the impact it has.
Yeah.
And I will keep doing it as long as it's making the impact. My personal goal is for it to be such a success that I can retire and make it a non-profit. So anyone can do it. And if they feel like they want to donate, they can, and that money will all go to people in third world countries that want to start their own businesses. So it will be kind of a pay it forward non-profit, I suppose.
Amazing.
Because I've always felt like the work I do, anyone should be able to have access to. If you want, success, you should be able to have it.
Out of interest, did Airbnb realise how much impact you're having on their hosts?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Like, you would have to be someone that is on their radar. I mean, if you're creating that much success, that obviously well, I don't know. Maybe they don't look as far as Australia.
I don't know. I think it's interesting because I think that they have their own little training platform. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, I see.
It's not very good. It's like,
no.
You style well, and you should take nice photographs, and you should write an engaging listing, but it doesn't tell you how. Okay, well, how do I take good photographs? How should I frame it? What should be in it? How do I style? What do I put in? What don't I?
Yes.
Think about this. So it's another thing where it's like, it will give you some suggestions, but it doesn't give you specific.
Get the tools. Yeah. And that's a really good point. So then, obviously, if people want to come and check out Captain's Rest, they can head to Instagram and search for Captain's Rest. What about if people want to come and do one of the classes or one of the master classes that you offer through the school? How can they find them?
So the Hosting Masterclass, I have an Instagram for that and a website. It's just the Hosting Masterclass, and they can join any time and just jump into the online school. It's always open, or take the class with me, which I think is the better option because it's a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing at the moment. So those are the only two avenues. Hopefully I can get back to the workshops soon, but
yeah.
I don't know. I'm finding I'm able to do more this way. You know, I was a bit nervous about Zoom teaching because I'm someone who's really tactile.
Yeah.
Classes are always full of flowers and props and it's very beautiful. So I was really anxious about providing an online experience because like my school, I wanted it to be amazing.
Yeah.
And I've been on a lot of really shit Zoom meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had to figure out how to make it amazing for people, which I think we nailed.
Yeah.
We're having a really beautiful experience. And I think even more so than our 2-day classes because they get 5 weeks together.
Yes.
Projects instead of 2 days.
Yes. Yeah.
There's some value in it if we can kind of figure out the tech to help us build community and connection.
Yeah, great. I love it. Fantastic. And I'll put those links in the show notes for anybody who's looking to connect with Sarah in this way and jump on board any of those masterclasses. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think it's going to take me about an hour to recover from this interview. There's been so much information that you've shared there. It's so brilliant, and it's also true. And yeah, you obviously are the complete, authentic representation of yourself, which we absolutely love. So thank you so much for that, Sarah.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, my total pleasure. It's so nice to be able to talk and reflect on the journey because sometimes I also, I'm so busy doing what I'm doing. When I tell the story, I'm like, oh shit, I have done a lot. It's really.
I know. I didn't know any of this about you either. All I did was get lost in your Instagram, and go, oh my God, I've got to interview this person. But you're amazing. You have done so much and achieved so much. But from listening to your story, it sounds like whichever path you choose or whichever path you chose to take or choose to take in the future, you will be wildly successful. So I thank you once again for being such an inspiration.
My total pleasure.
I love Sarah's story. What I love the most is how the magic that she brings into this world can spread and be accessed by so many simply by using social media as a storytelling tool. What about you? Do you have something magical and amazing that you want more people in the world to know about? Sarah used Instagram to promote Captain's Rest and her hosting masterclasses. Your business might be completely different and need another tool or channel to help get people to know about you. Well, if this is you and you need some guidance with how to do this, you may want to check out our How to Do Marketing Academy. This is a program that I have developed for ambitious and motivated small business owners just like you. It's a 12-month program where you'll work with me to gain clarity in direction with a customised marketing strategy and tactical plan. I'll guide you through 12 months of your recommended marketing activity that I'll actually break down into easy to follow 90-day tactical marketing plans. And these 90-day plans are almost like to-do lists. So I even order them in priority so you know exactly which activity to focus on first. To help you learn how to do the marketing on your list, I conduct monthly marketing masterclasses and give you the keys to a huge library of online resources such as ebooks and templates and videos that we have developed over the years of working with small business. You'll also get exclusive access to our Academy Facebook group where you can connect with other like-minded businesses just like you. I'm in that group all the time, answering questions and sharing loads of helpful marketing tips and tricks. So if you want to find out more, head on over to dragonflymarketing.com.au. And until next time, happy marketing.
You've been listening to another Morgan Media production.